They always laughed at humanity's primitive ships, the way our vessels awkwardly lumbered through the fourth and fifth dimensions, while their sleek crafts danced through the sixth with graceful ease. For centuries, we were the cosmic joke, the species that barely managed to break free from their planetary cradle, stumbling through space like toddlers taking their first steps. I still remember the condescending chuckles from the Xylaxian ambassador when we presented our latest breakthrough in dimensional travel. Charming, he said, his crystalline form shimmering with barely contained amusement. Perhaps in another millennium, you'll figure out how to properly fold space-time. The other representatives from the Galactic Council joined in, their various forms of laughter echoing through the chamber like a twisted symphony. But they didn't know about Project Ascendant. Deep within the asteroid mines of Cirrus, hidden from prying eyes and quantum sensors, we had discovered something extraordinary. A pattern in reality itself, a mathematical sequence that no other species had thought to explore. While they focused on brute forcing their way through dimensions, we took a different approach. We listened to the universe's whispers. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the bridge of the ESS Prometheus, her weathered hands steady on the control interface. 20 years of her life had led to this moment. The crew worked in focused silence, each person aware of the weight of history on their shoulders. Through the viewing portal, the massive form of Jupiter loomed, its swirling storms a fitting backdrop for what we were about to attempt. Final systems check complete, Lieutenant David reported, his voice tight with anticipation. Quantum matrix stable. Dimensional anchors engaged. We're ready, Admiral. Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes meeting each crew member's gaze. We weren't just soldiers or scientists anymore. We were humanity's vindication. Begin the sequence, she ordered, her voice calm despite the thundering of her heart. The Prometheus hummed to life, but not in the conventional way. There was no roar of engines or flash of exotic particles. Instead, the ship seemed to sing, harmonizing with frequencies that existed beyond normal space-time. The mathematical patterns we had discovered weren't just theoretical. They were keys to understanding how reality itself was structured. The first signs that something was different came when the Xylaxian patrol ships approached. Their standard procedure was to intercept any unauthorized vessels near the gas giant. We could almost imagine their smug expressions as they prepared to escort another primitive human ship back to Earth. Then their sensors registered what was happening. The Prometheus wasn't pushing against dimensions like their ships did. It wasn't forcing its way through reality. Instead, it was becoming part of the universe's fundamental melody, rising through dimensional planes like notes in a cosmic scale. The patrol ships' communications erupted with panic. Their sensors couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. The Prometheus existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, something their most advanced theories had deemed impossible. We weren't just climbing to the seventh dimension. We were rewriting the rules of how dimensional travel worked. As the ship reached its crescendo, I watched the realization dawn in the Xylaxian ship's erratic movements. Humanity hadn't been struggling all these centuries. We had been learning, observing, understanding. And now, as the Prometheus prepared to make its first true dimensional leap, the laughter had finally stopped. The universe held its breath as Admiral Chen gave the final command. The ship's song reached its peak, and reality itself began to bend, not through force, but through harmony. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. But that's where our story really begins. Time seemed to stretch like taffy as the Prometheus reached its harmonic resonance. The bridge crew watched in awe as reality rippled around them, the stars outside blurring into streams of light that curved in impossible directions. But this wasn't the violent, forceful dimensional shift that other species used. This was more like slipping between raindrops, finding the natural spaces where dimensions overlapped. Energy signature is stable, Lieutenant David called out, his dark eyes fixed on the readings scrolling across his screen. We're maintaining consonance with the seventh dimensional frequency. His voice held a note of wonder that matched what we all felt. Decades of research, countless failed experiments, and too many lost friends had led to this moment. The Xylaxian patrol ships were now frantically broadcasting on all frequencies, their messages a mixture of demands and barely concealed fear. They had never encountered anything like this before. Their rigid understanding of dimensional physics couldn't explain how a primitive human vessel was achieving what their greatest minds had deemed impossible. Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile as she watched their confusion. She thought back to her academy days, when instructors would lecture about humanity's limitations, about how we needed to accept our place in the galactic hierarchy. But her grandmother, a quantum physicist who had first noticed the patterns in background radiation that led to this discovery, had taught her differently. The universe doesn't play favorites, she used to say. It reveals its secrets to those who listen with patience and humility. The Prometheus' song reached a new octave, and the fabric of space-time began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Through the viewing portal, we could see fragments of other dimensions bleeding through, geometric patterns that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space, colors that had no names in any human language. "We're detecting multiple incoming vessels," Commander Richardson announced, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. "Looks like the Zalaxians called for backup. 3 heavy cruisers dropping out of sixth-dimensional space." But their arrival came too late. The Prometheus had found its rhythm, its harmony with the universe growing stronger with each passing second. The mathematical patterns we had discovered weren't just theories anymore. They were becoming a symphony of reality itself. What the other species never understood was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our resources. It was our ability to look at problems differently, to question established wisdom, and to find beauty in the spaces between conventional thought. The new Zalaxian vessels arrived just in time to witness something unprecedented. The Prometheus began to phase in and out of conventional spacetime, each pulse bringing it closer to its target frequency. The ship wasn't fighting against the universe's laws. It was dancing with them. "Final harmonic convergence in 30 seconds, Lieutenant David announced, his voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. Around the bridge, crew members gripped their stations tighter, knowing they were about to cross a threshold no human had ever crossed before. Admiral Chen stood from her command chair, her presence commanding attention even as reality warped around them. "Remember this moment," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the bridge, "not because we proved them wrong, but because we proved ourselves right. We didn't get here by copying their methods or accepting their limitations. We got here by trusting our own path." The ship's song reached its final note, a perfect resonance with the seventh dimension. As the Prometheus prepared to make its ultimate transition, the Zalaxian vessels could only watch in stunned silence. The age of human submission to galactic authority was about to end, not with weapons or warfare, but with a song that would reshape our understanding of the universe itself. The moment the Prometheus fully resonated with the seventh dimension, everything we thought we knew about physics seemed to rewrite itself. Colors inverted, gravity rippled like waves on a pond, and for a brief moment, every crew member could see the strings of reality itself, gossamer threads of possibility stretching into infinity. But something wasn't right. The ship's harmonic resonance began to fluctuate, creating discordant notes in our carefully calculated symphony. Lieutenant David's hands flew across his console, his forehead beating with sweat. "Admiral, we're detecting unexpected interference patterns. Something's trying to disrupt our dimensional alignment." The Zalaxian cruisers had deployed what looked like energy anchors, massive arrays designed to stabilize conventional spacetime. They were attempting to force us back into the lower dimensions, like pushing a cork back into a bottle. Their desperate actions revealed just how much our success terrified them. "They don't understand what they're doing," Commander Richardson shouted over the growing vibrations. "Their anchors are creating dimensional feedback loops. If they don't stop—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. We could all feel it, the fabric of space-time stretching dangerously thin around us. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos with steel resolve. "Maintain our harmonic frequency. They're using brute force because that's all they know. But we didn't come this far to fall back on their methods." Her words steadied the crew, reminding us why we were different, why we might succeed where others had failed. The ship's sensors screamed as reality buckled around us. Through the viewing portal, we could see Jupiter's massive form seeming to fold in on itself, its storms moving in impossible patterns as dimensions began to bleed together. The Xylaxian ship's energy anchors were having an unintended effect. Instead of forcing us down, they were creating a resonance cascade. "Admiral," Lieutenant David called out, his voice tight with urgency. "The interference is actually amplifying our dimensional harmonics. We're being pushed higher than seventh dimensional space. If this continues," he trailed off, staring at readings that shouldn't have been possible. The bridge crew watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as new patterns emerged in the chaos. The mathematical sequences we had discovered were evolving, responding to the pressure like a living thing. The Prometheus' song changed, incorporating the discord into its melody, transforming what should have been destruction into something else entirely. Through breaks in normal space-time, we caught glimpses of other realities, other possibilities, versions of Earth where humanity had taken different paths, where we hadn't been content to stay in the shadows of more advanced civilizations. The barriers between what was and what could be grew increasingly thin. "They're powering up their main weapons," Commander Richardson reported grimly. "Looks like they'd rather destroy us than let us prove them wrong." The Xylaxian cruisers were moving into attack formation, their crystal-like hulls glowing with gathered energy. But Admiral Chen smiled, and in that smile was centuries of human determination. "They still don't understand. We're not fighting against the universe anymore. We're becoming part of its song." She turned to Lieutenant David. "Prepare for full harmonic convergence. Let's show them what happens when you try to hold back the tide of human innovation." The Prometheus shuddered as its systems pushed to their limits. We were about to attempt something that crossed the line from theoretical physics into the realm of the impossible. As the Xylaxian weapons powered up and dimensional barriers continued to crack around us, we prepared to take humanity's greatest leap into the unknown. Just as the Prometheus prepared to transcend known dimensional space, our sensors detected something that shouldn't have been possible, another harmonic signature eerily similar to our own. Through the kaleidoscope of fractured reality, we glimpsed another ship, its design both familiar and alien, riding the same dimensional frequencies we had discovered. "That's impossible," Lieutenant David whispered, his fingers racing across the console. "The harmonics, they're human in origin, but they're far more advanced than anything we've developed." The mysterious vessel moved like a shadow through the dimensional chaos, its presence sending ripples through the mathematical patterns we had so carefully mapped. Admiral Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the readings. "Check the quantum signature," she ordered, her voice carrying an edge none of us had heard before. The results made the bridge crew fall silent. The ship's temporal markers suggested it was centuries ahead of our time. The Xylaxian cruisers, still preparing to fire, suddenly found themselves caught between two impossible human vessels. Their energy anchors began to resonate with both ships' harmonics, creating a complex web of dimensional frequencies that threatened to tear apart the fabric of local space-time. "Admiral," Commander Richardson called out, his voice tight with urgency, "we're receiving a transmission. It's using our own encryption protocols, but they're far more sophisticated. When the message came through, it was in English, carried on waves of pure mathematical harmony. Prometheus, hold your position." A familiar voice echoed through the bridge, a voice that made Admiral Chen's face go pale. It was her own voice, aged by decades but unmistakable. "What you're about to attempt will work, but the cost will be higher than you can imagine. The Xylaxians aren't trying to stop progress. They're trying to prevent a catastrophe they've seen before." The bridge erupted in confused murmurs as the implications sank in. Through the viewing portal, we could see the future ship more clearly now. Its hull bore the same markings as the Prometheus, but weathered by battles we had yet to fight. The name was still visible, ESS Prometheus B. "The dimensional harmonics," Lieutenant David reported, his voice shaking, "they're not just similar to ours. They're evolving versions of our original equations, like they've been refined through decades of use and warfare." The last word hung heavy in the air. The Xylaxian cruisers had stopped their attack preparations, their sensors undoubtedly detecting the temporal anomalies unfolding before them. The future Prometheus's presence had changed everything, turning our triumph into something far more complex and dangerous. Admiral Chen stood frozen, watching her future self's ship maneuver through impossible spaces. "What could have happened?" she whispered. "That would make us try to stop our own breakthrough." The answer came in fragments of data streaming from the future vessel, images of dimensional rifts spreading across the galaxy, of worlds torn apart by uncontrolled harmonic resonances, of a war fought across 11 dimensions. The Prometheus shuddered as reality continued to warp around us, caught between present ambition and future warning. Our carefully calculated ascension had become a moment of terrible choice: continue our climb toward technological supremacy, or heed a warning from a future we never imagined possible. Through the chaos of overlapping dimensions, we could see the Xylaxian ships taking up new positions. They weren't preparing to attack anymore. They were forming a containment pattern we had never seen before. Whatever happened in the future timeline, it had apparently forged an alliance between humanity and our former mockers, united against a threat we were about to unleash. In that moment of crisis, with reality bending around us and two versions of the Prometheus locked in a dimensional standoff, Admiral Chen made a decision that would reshape humanity's destiny. Instead of shutting down our harmonic drive or pushing forward with our original plan, she did something unprecedented. She began adjusting our ship's resonance to match the complex pattern being created by the combined presence of all vessels. "If we can't go forward, and we can't go back," she announced, her voice steady despite the chaos, "then we'll find another way. Lieutenant David, synchronize our harmonic frequencies with both the Xylaxian containment field and our future counterpart. Let's turn this discord into harmony." As our ship's song changed, something remarkable happened. The dimensional turbulence began to stabilize, but not by collapsing back to normal space. Instead, the overlapping frequencies created something entirely new, a controlled dimensional intersection that no single species had achieved before. "The future Prometheus is matching our adjustments," Lieutenant David reported, wonder creeping into his voice. "They're not trying to stop us anymore. They're helping us modify the equations. The Xylaxians, they're adapting their containment field to support the new pattern." Through the viewing portal, we watched as reality settled into a new configuration. The dimensional barriers didn't break or collapse. They transformed. Jupiter's swirling storms became a backdrop to a phenomenon never before seen in our galaxy, a stable bridge between multiple dimensional states. The voice of future Admiral Chen returned, this time with a note of revelation. "We didn't come back to prevent you from ascending," she explained. "We came back to show you how to do it right. In our timeline, we forced our way through, never realizing that the real breakthrough wasn't in climbing higher, but in learning to dance between the dimensions." Commander Richardson's tactical display suddenly lit up with new data. The Xylaxian ships, they're sharing their dimensional technology with us. Full specs of their containment systems, their dimensional drives, everything they've developed over centuries. They're offering to help. The truth hit us like a wave. Our greatest achievement wasn't in proving our superiority, but in discovering a way to bridge the gap between species and dimensions alike. The future Prometheus hadn't come to warn us of impending doom, but to guide us toward a greater destiny. Your laughter stopped today. Admiral Chen transmitted to the Xylaxian fleet, not because we proved you wrong, but because we all learned something right. The response came not in words, but in a subtle shift of their containment field, strengthening the dimensional bridge we had created together. As both versions of the Prometheus maintained their position within the stable dimensional intersection, Lieutenant David made a startling discovery. "Admiral, these new harmonic patterns, they're not just stable, they're reproducible. We can teach others how to create these bridges safely. We've turned a weapon into a doorway." The future Prometheus began to fade, its mission accomplished. But before it disappeared completely, future Admiral Chen sent one final message. "Remember this moment. Not as the day humanity stood above, but as the day we all stood together. Though," she added with a hint of satisfaction that carried across time itself, "it is rather nice to finally have the last laugh." As the temporal ship vanished and the dimensional bridge stabilized, we realized we had achieved something far greater than dimensional ascension. We had discovered a truth that transcended space and time. True power lies not in rising above others, but in finding ways to rise together. The Zalaxian ships moved into formation alongside the Prometheus, their crystalline hulls refracting the light of Jupiter in a display that seemed almost celebratory. As we prepared to navigate this new reality we had created together, Admiral Chen smiled. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them the joke's over. It's time for a new story to begin." In the weeks that followed our dimensional breakthrough, Earth's scientific community worked alongside Zalaxian experts to understand and refine our discovery. The once secret facility on Sears became a hub of interspecies cooperation, with crystalline ships now docking alongside human vessels in a display that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Admiral Chen's report to the Galactic Council wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. The chamber that had once echoed with mocking laughter now resonated with serious discussions about the potential of harmonic dimensional travel. Representatives from dozens of species came forward with their own research, pieces of a puzzle that could only be solved when we all worked together. Lieutenant David led the team that documented the mathematical principles behind our success. The funny thing is, he explained during one of the joint sessions, every species had part of the answer. The Zalaxians understood dimensional containment, others had mastered energy manipulation, and we humans found the harmonic patterns. But it took all of us to make it work. The Prometheus became a training vessel, teaching crews from various species how to navigate the new dimensional bridges. Commander Richardson often joked that our bridge now looked like a meeting of the United Nations crossed with an alien carnival, but there was pride in his voice when he said it. Perhaps the most profound change came in how we viewed ourselves. Humanity's drive to prove our worth had been replaced by something more valuable, the confidence to be partners rather than competitors. The mysterious future that had threatened to unravel reality never came to pass, replaced by a present filled with possibilities we were all eager to explore. You know what I find most interesting? Admiral Chen mused during the first anniversary celebration of the breakthrough, her eyes watching the dimensional bridges shimmer around Jupiter like aurora borealis. We spent so much time trying to rise above our limitations, we almost missed the chance to transcend them entirely. The Zalaxian ambassador, the same one who had once laughed at our efforts, now stood beside her. His crystalline form pulsed with colors that we had learned meant respect and friendship. "And we were so convinced of our superiority," he responded, "we almost missed the chance to learn something new. Perhaps that is the greatest discovery, that advancement comes not from rising above others, but from rising together. The technology we developed spread throughout the galaxy, not as a weapon or a tool of dominance, but as a bridge between cultures. The dimensional harmonies we discovered became known as the Chen-Zalaxian principles, a name that celebrated both the human insight and the alien wisdom that made them possible." Back on Earth, in the academy where Admiral Chen had once been taught humanity's limitations, a new generation of students learned a different lesson. They studied not just the physics of dimensional travel, but the importance of approaching the unknown with both confidence and humility. The Prometheus continued its missions, each journey revealing new wonders in the spaces between dimensions. But it was no longer alone. Ships of all designs and origins now sailed the dimensional tides together, their combined songs creating harmonies that made the universe itself seem to smile. As for that future version of the Prometheus that had appeared in our moment of crisis, we never saw it again. Perhaps it never needed to exist in this timeline, or perhaps it still sailed through dimensions we had yet to imagine. Either way, its message had been received and its purpose fulfilled. The galaxy still laughs, but now we laugh together, and in the end, that made all the difference, because in the vast symphony of space and time, it turns out the sweetest music comes not from solo performances, but from all of us playing in harmony.